Welcome to the Mike White Podcast, where I, Mike White, share my conversations and book reviews through my journey to learn all that goes on in this amazing world. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. All right, welcome to the Mike White Podcast, episode 3. Today on the show, our guest is Navy submariner, real estate whiz, home improvement specialist, and the man that piqued my curiosity into Bitcoin is a good friend, Travis Smith. Thanks for joining us, Travis.
Oh, that was a good intro. I don't know if I live up to all those things, but
No,
yeah.
definitely.
How's it been? Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. And I met you at OCS, and I know we can talk about OCS, but it definitely was not what I was expecting. And then we went along to do Power School and Prototype together, and then and then we went our separate ways to the different submarines, different coasts. So it's been a while since I've seen Travis, but I've been just super impressed by his actions through his tour of just taking action and being successful in real estate. And I'm really looking forward to this interview. So I'll just start off with your, getting into the Navy. Like, what made you decide, I'm a college kid, I'm going to go underwater in a steel tube with a bunch of other guys and girls and serve my country in the Navy?
Yeah. So that was actually a decision that I mulled over for a long time. And long story short, I asked a Magic 8 Ball for deciding whether or not I was going to do this. There was a lot of other factors that went into. Yeah, actually, yeah. That's at the time in college, I was on a kick of all these decisions are just random and it doesn't matter anyways. No, but in all seriousness, I worked through a lot of the benefits, the pros and cons at the time. So at the time, I was actually a co-op for this company called Samtech, and they were paying for my tuition and my books in college, and they were also paying me, I think it was like $12 an hour back then, which was pretty good in Colorado Springs. For like an hourly wage on top of paying for my tuition and the books and lab fees and stuff like that. And so they also had a 401k match. So they had 5% match, and then they gave you 7%. So I was just like throwing as much money in my 401k as I could at the time. And that was kind of that was like the very first instance of like, hey, I should be planning for my future because right now I have this really good opportunity. It doesn't matter what I invest in as long as I am investing, because I think it's Warren Buffett that says time in the market beats timing the market, or maybe it's Peter Lynch. I can't remember, one of those two.
Yeah, I've heard that one.
Yeah, and so that was my initial thought. So I was working at that company and making, $12 an hour, which was pretty good. But then this opportunity came up. I remember there was some lieutenants that came and presented at one of my classes in college and said, hey, this is a really good opportunity. It pays you cash. As you guys, people know, you like go in as an E6, because you did the same program, right, for NUPOC?
Yeah, same NUPOC program.
Yeah. So, yeah, all the same stuff. So I was, collecting the E6 money for the BAH and base pay and stuff as cash payments. And then this other company was covering my tuition. So I was making like $80,000 a year while I was in college, just getting paid to have a ton of fun. So I was able to get all my student loans paid off. And then I don't know where the forethought came. I was like, holy cow, this is a lot of money. I got to not blow all this money because I could really set myself up for life with this. And I took my first personal finance class in college because I was like, hey, I don't want to be like one of those guys who joins the military and goes out and buys a $50,000 sports car on credit and then is in a bunch of debt and stuff like that. So the personal finance course helped a ton. Like, oh my gosh, I learned so much, and it just opened my eyes to all the stuff that was possible. And yeah, that was kind of really what like started me down the path of all the financing and stuff like that. But I guess I missed some of the question, which was how did I decide to join the Navy? I knew from everyone I had talked about and all the articles I had read online, they were like, hey, this is going to be a very difficult thing, but it'll be super rewarding. And at the time, I was like, okay, I can do anything for 5 years. It can't be that bad.
Yeah.
Uh, I didn't know. Gosh, I wish I knew the magnitude of those words back then.
Did you know what
I'm sure
duty days
you
were?
went through. No, I had no idea.
I didn't know it.
I had literally no concept of the military, even the military as a whole, because no one in my family had been in the military. So it was like I had no idea what I was getting into.
Yeah, and they
Yeah,
give us that tour in San Diego. Did you go to San Diego?
yeah, I did. I went to San Diego. Yeah, and I went on the submarine for like all of 5 seconds, and they can't show
Exactly.
you anything on the submarine. They just like walk you around. You have no idea what you're looking at and stuff.
I didn't know
Yeah,
any
originally,
questions I was supposed to
yeah,
ask.
yeah, like what things you were supposed to ask and stuff. The guy got me. He was like, "Oh yeah, by the time you make it to the fleet, the Virginia class will be rolling out. You'll probably be on a Virginia class. It'll be like the cutting edge technology. It'll be so cool." And I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, that'd be sweet. Yeah." And I didn't realize it'd be fucking technology from the 90s because it takes forever to get vetted through and just like, yeah.
All the shit tanks cross connected, and I don't know if you have any shit stories. They didn't tell
No,
us those
ours.
signing up.
Yeah, the Virginia class is actually way better, and it doesn't have that big of a problem. But we did overpressurize one of our tanks when we were pulling into I think it was Yokosuka. We overpressurized one of the tanks and then blew it all over the sail while people were the sail and the DDS while people were topside and stuff. It was
Oh,
it's
that's
so
good.
bad. Everyone's
Good
like hiding
stuff.
behind the DDS while fucking shit's flying through the air. God, that
Uh,
guy was so mad.
oh man.
Yeah,
And
that's the only
so,
good shit story.
so they get you on the Navy. You don't. So you're in college. You know you're going to the Navy. Don't really know. All they tell us is to make good grades. So there's not too much Navy prep to be doing. And you end
Yeah,
up
they're like,
buying.
hey, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I was like, you end up buying a place in college. Like, was that from the financial course that you thought, maybe I should, stop being a renter and go ahead and invest in real estate?
Yeah, so I've actually thought about this for a while. I don't know where, like somewhere in my DNA it is like written to be frugal and like count my pennies. I don't know where I picked that up, but that has been a skill that I've had, or a skill, blessing, curse. I don't know how you want to look at it, but um, in college, I was like staying in the dorms, and each one of us was paying like, I don't know, fuck, like $1,000 a month basically when you calculate it out to stay in the dorms. And they were putting us in these tiny little rooms of 5 people. And I'm like, holy shit, each one of these rooms is making like $5,000 a
Yep.
month. And then
Yeah.
the number of rooms in the college campus, I was like, this is insane. This is so much money. So then when I moved out of the dorms, I was like, well, I've got a bunch of buddies. Why don't we all just rent a house together? And then each person will pay based off the room that they're renting, and it'll be super cheap. Which, a lot of people have that idea. And I was able to, because I was making money from the Navy, I was able to qualify for like a pretty nice, like 5 bedroom house, and like 5 of my buddies moved in. And that was like the first step. And then I was like, okay, well, now I'm paying the landlord this much money. I was like, why don't I own the house? And that was like, I don't know. I think I was a senior in college. Well, sort of a senior. It took 5 years to finish because I switched majors from mechanical engineering. I had like 3 classes left to finish from mechanical engineering. But because of when I got picked up from NUPOC, I switched majors to electrical engineering and extended for 2 years to make sure to take the
Smart.
max. Yeah, exactly. Take the max advantage of NUPOC. So, because I applied to the NUPOC program like I was an electrical engineering major with 2 years left to finish. And then
Okay.
if I didn't get accepted to NUPOC, then I would just scrap that plan and finish out my mechanical engineering program.
Did
Because,
your
yeah, go ahead.
did your recruiter give you that idea, or because that's pretty
No,
genius?
yeah, that was just something I came up with because the company I was paying for, or working for was already paying my tuition. So I was like, oh, it's no extra money to stay in school, or it's no extra money for me to stay in school longer. Uh, and I was, enjoying because I was on track to finish my mechanical engineering degree in 3 years because I took so many classes in high school or whatever. Because I finished through Calc 2, did calc-based physics at the community college, and then did a bunch of other like little classes here and there to collect a bunch of extra credits. So I was like on track to finish in 3 years. and then switched to electrical engineering and started basically fresh, and then finished in 2 years. Um, so the last year is when I bought the house, and then yeah, I just had a bunch of friends. It started with me and just one other guy. We moved into the house and we were just like hanging out. At the same time, I was remodeling the house and I was like trying to convince anybody I could to move in for cheap rent because they were, I think when I first started, everyone was paying like 250 to $300, which is like cheap, dirt cheap rent for them. But
Yeah.
single families were renting for like $1,200 at the time, I think. And so it worked out in my favor. And my mortgage was like $1,000. So I only had to rent like a handful of the rooms to be able to cover the full mortgage. And I still have that house. That's, my probably my cash cow of my portfolio right now. And we just repainted that house recently with the extra proceeds that we get from renting out room by room. But that house hacking is something that I've like followed at all of the places that I went, because even after OCS, when we moved down to Charleston, we did the same thing. We rented a house it was me, Blake, Nate, Tim, and then Blake's brother, and then the five of us moved into this house and then split the rent to try to be cheap. And then I tried to do the same thing in Charleston when I bought another house in Charleston.
The Park Circle house.
Yeah, the Park Circle house. Yeah, but for some reason, all the property managers in South Carolina were like, yeah, sorry, you can't make any money renting this way. I don't know why you would even want to. I was like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I'm making a killing in Colorado, and I still am. Maybe the rules are different in South Carolina. I'm not sure. But that one's just rented out as a normal single family right now. And when interest rates dropped super low, I was able to get it refinanced. So it's finally making money. But for a while, I was just making money on appreciation for that house because it was just at the break-even point. I think it was like $100 less than the mortgage. So
Yeah, but the appreciation in the area now is insane. So I'm
oh
sure
yeah, the
that
house is
was
like doubled in value. It was like a 50% return. So that was extremely lucky on both of those
yeah, because the Park
times.
Circle area, it's not downtown Charleston, but it's just north, and it's still like really cool. Like there's a bunch of bars, and it's very walkable. And I would
Yeah,
think it would be good as a short-term rental. Do you ever consider that?
I haven't actually, just because I'm not in the area. So like trying to do a short-term rental in a place where I can't go and do this stuff isn't something I've looked into too much. But I wouldn't be surprised if it did, because yeah, they remodeled that old brick building that was like full of asbestos and made it into like a bunch of shops and stuff down there too. Yeah, it's a pretty nice area. I don't know if you've been back since Power School, but
Yeah, I love Charleston. I've driven through a few times, but it's still, I think it's on the up and up. I mean, because you got the colleges down there, and then both the Air Force Base and the Navy base. I think that's huge of having like multiple to make sure you have renters like throughout the future, not just relying on one industry. Because even like the
yeah,
military has so much infrastructure there, I don't think they're going to move. But even if they
yeah.
did, you have the airport and like Boeing and Mercedes and like just everyone's flooding into Charleston. I think that's a pretty safe market.
Yeah, especially since the Navy just put those two new prototypes down there, and they're going to be there for another 30 years. So
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Because just with the nuclear regulations, like has to be a super pain in the ass to think
yeah,
about trying to relocate those if they ever
oh
wanted
yeah,
to.
yeah. There's no way that I doubt anyone would be like, hey, we're going to come let a bunch of 18 to 20-year-olds come test practice running nuclear plants outside of in this river in your state. Everyone's gonna be like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I wonder how much the Navy pays the state of Charleston to be able to do that.
It
I'm
definitely
sure it's a
helps that it
ton of
was
money.
like the history of submarines there, that like it used to be
Yeah.
like a submarine base. So I guess people are a
Hmm.
little more accustomed to it, but I bet most of the residents there don't even know there's prototypes there.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's been so long since anyone has done any of that, but yeah, because I guess yeah, I never knew about it before joining the military too. I didn't realize how prevalent nuclear power was until I got into kind of that industry.
No. How'd you talked about like your first home purchase
Hmm.
for research wise, are you a book guy, or do you like watch YouTube videos, or how do you kind of build up enough confidence in your knowledge that you knew like, okay, this is a good idea?
Um, yeah, so that's a difficult question to answer because so I can talk about at the time and then now, but at the time I was really used to so like uh, even more backstory. I'm dyslexic, so for the longest time I've always like learned from others, learned through listening and stuff like that. So not really a lot of reading or figuring things out on my own because in some cases I just couldn't, and so I'd have to like ask people, and they would provide just that little nugget that you need to like get going or whatever as like a coping strategy. So, anyways, uh, I leaned heavily on a real estate agent. So a buddy of mine that I was working with at Samtech, his house was selling and it was a duplex, and he was telling me about, the duplex basically being the same thing as a house hack just for like smaller families or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, that'd be sweet. I wouldn't mind adding another or like getting into that space or whatever, because his house was right next to the Ivy Wild Brewery in Colorado Springs, which is a elementary school that shut down like a while ago in the middle of Colorado Springs, and then they converted it into a brewery that has all these shops and like all this stuff, and it's so cool. If you get the chance when you're in Colorado Springs, you should check it out. But
That's
anyways,
smart.
the house that his landlord was selling at the time, he was telling me like, hey man, you should buy it. He's selling it for a super good deal. It's going to be a great deal. The house will double in value, blah, blah, blah. And like got me interested, but I was moving too slow to be able to actually buy that house. And so then his landlord was also a real estate agent who flew helicopters in the Army. And he was like, hey, I know this one didn't work out, but I'd love to help you try to find another house. He knows exactly what to look for because he's had this successful duplex for a while. And so I was like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. And so then I was like, just jump in, feet first, not even like, because I know a lot of people get stuck on the first step of like, hey, I got to do this. This is a huge commitment, blah, blah, blah. And, maybe some of it was just ignorance and that I didn't realize how difficult it could be to get rid of that house if you're on the other side. So had I not bought into the massive bull market of, from 2009 to 2022 or 2021, I guess, I could have been in a very different situation where I'd be cursing this house that I got stuck with and blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, same thing in Colorado. That house ended up doubling in value, but so a lot of it was just luck. And and when I bought the house, I bought it in a way that provided the protection that I needed, which was that I knew I would be able to rent out all 5 of the rooms at the time, and I would make $1,000 a month. And I was like, to me, it doesn't matter what the house price does. Like, this is a no-brainer. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah. As long as my thoughts are, as long as the cash flow is good enough to where even if it's not positive, but you're comfortable with it, like it's
yeah,
almost like a forced savings account,
yeah,
and you have
exactly.
enough reserves to like if it goes vacant for a couple months, like you'll be fine. You can't lose unless you put yourself in a corner and you have to sell when it's depreciated. But if you hold for the long run, like in a good area, the appreciation is where you're going to make your money, it seems like.
Yeah, you kind of get to double dip with that aspect, and maybe that was what helped me uh, like quell some of my fears because I knew I would live there for 2 years because I was already in the military at this point, and I had 2 more years or a year and a half left before leaving to OCS. So I was like, okay, at the minimum, I'm paying $400 in rent right now. It's an extra uh, $700 that I'm going to be paying towards mortgage and fees and blah, blah, blah. I was like, I can cover that difference even if I can't get it rented, um, right away. So I was like, okay, that's no big deal. And then I was like, then once I do get it rented, I only need 3 of the 5 bedrooms to be rented at any one time to cover the mortgage. And then if it is fully rented, I'll be making $1,000. I was like, the downside risk seemed so small to me at the time. And I'm sure people buying right now and watching their house price drop by 10% in a couple of months is
Yeah.
probably a huge blow to the stomach. But I mean, like you said, if you buy for the long term, and that's what I did with all the houses. Each house that I bought, I was like, I plan to hold this house forever. Then it seems like such a one-way or one-sided deal. It's like the risks are so small compared to, and that's maybe some of the beauty of having a government job is you're not as afraid of getting fired right away because usually people in the government are like the last to be let go and things like that.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I guess that's probably one reason they're able to do the VA loan. And did you do the VA loan the first one, or did it qualify for that? Because
No, so I didn't do the VA loan on the first house. I just used my first-time homebuyer's loan because it only required me to put, I think it was 5% down, which was the max to get the cheapest interest rate. But then you still had private mortgage insurance. But with the private mortgage insurance, as soon as you had 20% equity in the house, you could, have them come out and appraise your house and then get rid of the 20% equity.
mhm.
So because I had a background in remodeling, so my dad had a remodeling company and then moved into just a like solid surface countertop shop that he lost in 2008, which is a whole nother story. But so from the time when I was like 11 and even younger, I'd been like working out in his shop and helping him do remodel stuff and going with him to work on houses and stuff like that. So I learned a lot of those skills, and then I remodeled that entire house. I like gutted the kitchen, gutted all the bathrooms and stuff. And yeah, so then I remodeled the whole house and then had them come out and reappraise it and was able to get rid of the private mortgage insurance because the market had gone up enough in that time, plus the renovations that I had done to get rid of the private mortgage insurance that was originally required because it's just until you have that 20% equity built in the house.
Hmm. And so
Yeah,
it's not, you don't have to worry about your payments if your equity can go up faster than you realize
right.
sometimes, I guess. But
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's called the first time home buyers, but this is where my research, I'm not super sure. I've seen that it seems like anytime you're using that for a personal residence or primary
Hmm.
residence, you have access to the first time home buyers, even if it's not your first home purchase. Is that,
Uh,
have you found that to be true, or I don't know if you looked
I
into it?
can't. Yeah, so I can't remember. It's been a while since I've looked at using that loan because I know it's like air quotes first-time homebuyers. It's mostly just an FHA loan, which is a government-backed loan. So the government is saying that they will pay the difference if you default on the loan and the bank has to sell or whatever to make the bank whole. Um, and and I can't. I want to say so. It's not like your first house, but it's like the first house that you have purchased and lived in as your primary residence in like some time span. So like if you buy a house, sell that house, move in, rent somewhere, and then go to buy another house, you could also qualify for that first time homebuyer's loan.
Yeah,
Um,
I need to look at the requirement because I know the VA loan is a year. You have to live in it for a
yeah,
year.
this is similar for this one. You had to like air quotes have the intention of moving in on the day that you close
Hmm.
is what I remember from that. But yeah, the VA loan you're supposed to live there for a year. But they say nothing about like living there and then renting out unused space, which
No,
is
because
what I did. Yeah.
and that's fine. I think that's fine because the main thing is the liability that your living expenses are going to be no more than that mortgage. So really,
Yeah.
as a bank, they're more comfortable with you
They'd probably
doing that.
want you to do that. Yeah. Yeah. Because
Yeah,
didn't you do something similar in South Carolina? I don't remember if you used your VA loan or if you used your first time homebuyer's loan.
yeah. I was late to the game. I didn't even know of a first time home buyer's loan. So now
Ah,
I was learning about that later. But I
yeah.
did the VA loan and just wanted to just like, okay, what can I get? What can
Yeah.
I max this thing out and get as
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
people in here as possible? And
Yeah.
yeah, it turned out it was the same thing. Like initially, I was a little on edge because I was losing a little money every month once I moved out and I was renting it out.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, oh, this is another thing. I didn't read the HOA before I bought the house.
Oh, yeah. I remember HOAs are terrible, especially if you're trying to house hack. Yeah.
So I was house hacking with my buddies, like all going
Hmm.
to power school together. And then I read the HOA one day and I'm like, wait, it says I can't rent out individual rooms and the leases have to be like 6 months each. So once we all finished, I was like, all right, I've made it long enough. I need to get back in regs, and
In
so I started,
compliance with,
yeah, in
yeah.
compliance. So I started going to single families, and so I was losing money a little bit every month because of that.
Hmm.
But ultimately,
You
like you
probably made it
said,
all back in appreciation. Yeah.
yeah, appreciation, and then the rate fell, and I refinanced, and then
Yep.
um, I so there too. I like that I did it because it made me it's just a little safer, more conservative. But
Hmm.
I sometimes I wish, oh man, I really should have cash out refinanced and
Yeah.
use
Yeah.
that money to buy another house type thing. But
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
if you done that?
No, so I've looked at that. One of the problems I ran into because it wasn't my primary residence, the bank that I was using for the first house that actually had some equity when I went to look at it, they were not as interested in letting me do a cash out refinance because it wasn't my primary residence.
Oh, okay.
And so I only looked with that one specific bank for that one short time window. But now if houses are getting ready to take a haircut by 50%, like some crazy people are saying, if that happens, then yeah, I'd have to go in and do a cash out refinance and try to buy anything that's available at the time. Because yeah, real estate is still my preferred method for building long-term wealth, just because of like you got like three things working for you. You can have cash flow, you can have appreciation, and then the reduction in your taxes. It's just like a
Yep.
no-brainer for building wealth. And uh, and so I don't know if you know about this, but if you buy a house and you live in that house for 2 years of a 5-year time window, you can sell that house and avoid $100,000 worth of capital gains.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
That's
yeah,
crazy. That's why I hate selling. I hate selling.
yeah,
I told myself I would never sell, and I ended up selling my Georgia
yeah,
house because I was like, the market's high right now. I lived
yeah,
in it, so now I can go ahead and sell it without the capital gains. And
yep.
but yeah, if I ever sell my South Carolina house, like I'm definitely gonna move there for 2 years.
Move back, live there for 2 years. Yeah, or do the like kind exchange, the 529 or whatever it is, or I don't
Yeah,
remember what the
yeah.
tax
10,
code
10,
is,
is
but
it 1031?
or
1031
1031.
exchange?
Yeah, 529 is the student one. Yeah, the 1031 exchange into an apartment complex. I don't know if you know this, but two people with their full VA benefit can buy up to, I think it's like a 13 unit apartment together, and
Ooh,
basically all the normal of a VA loan. So I can't remember the specifics. I'd pull them up, but
where are we
um,
gonna buy it at? Where are we going?
oh, yeah, yeah. No plans yet. Just keeping that in the back of my mind. Obviously, you as one of my primary candidates for shopping around for something like that. That would be huge. Yeah, because oh my gosh, imagine buying like a huge 13 unit apartment without any down payment and keeping all your money for like remodels, rehabs, and switching out management teams and getting all the rooms filled and stuff like that. Like, oh man, that'd be huge.
And that's the one thing that you get for house hacking and doing room by room and apartments get is
Yeah.
the vacancies. You like it. It's never going to happen. Like it's very small chance that every single room is going to go vacant at once.
Yeah,
So like
exactly. And that
you'll
helps
never.
like buy down some of your risk, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. Like you have, it's harder to get into the space, but I feel like
Hmm.
that's like the more beneficial investment is those big properties.
Yeah, and so you asked how I learn about this stuff. So originally I leveraged a lot of knowledge from that real estate agent that I was using, and now I listen to audiobooks while I'm driving to work, and I listen to YouTube videos all the time, and I'm like, I do 2x on the speed, and
Yep.
I'm always
Yeah.
just like blazing through stuff. Yeah, so I'm like going for my morning run and like crushing through audiobooks. Yeah. So, and it seems like on Bigger Pockets, uh, all of the people like buy a handful of single family units, rent them, get their feet wet, figure out how to be a landlord, learn some of that stuff, and then they like just like fucking Monopoly, they just sell those houses and buy a hotel type thing. It's just like,
Yeah, and it's funny, like I just recently found bigger pockets like at the end of my sea tour, probably like a year ago.
oh no way. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, this is exactly what Travis is doing. This that whole like
Yeah.
Burr method and all the stuff they
Hmm.
talk about. Like it works. Like it just
Yeah, it absolutely works. Yeah, you just have to listen to those people and follow exactly what they're doing. It's just like, yeah, I'm struggling right now because I was shopping around in Northern Virginia trying to find a house, but I cannot find. I've like adjusted to so many different strategies. I can't find anything where the rent is enough to compensate for the mortgage.
Yeah.
So I've looked at multifamily houses all the way up to 5 bedrooms. I've looked at single family houses. I've looked at house hacking, duplexes, condos, apartments, single family homes, literally townhouses, everything. And I can't buy a house and then rent it later and earn anywhere close. I'm like, it's all of them are like minus $1,000 or $2,000 for like a monthly mortgage payment, which
Per
blows my
month.
mind. Yes, per month. Yeah,
Wow.
so like negative cash flow, not even including management expenses, anything, just like straight like mortgage and rent, like negative 2,000. And so it's crazy. So I don't know, like something is going to have to change there, right? Because it's so much cheaper to rent. And so I've been like trying to think through what would cause that. So there's a ton of huge, huge apartment complexes here that have, hundreds of bedrooms, and I'm sure they need a super small profit margin on each one of those bedrooms in order, because like if each bedroom is making, a couple $100, and then you add it over 100 of them, then you're making some pretty good money. So it's easy for them to take smaller margins, whereas guys with less properties require a larger margin and it's harder to get. So I don't know if maybe that's what's suppressing some of those rents is because there's so many of those apartments available, or
And
yeah, go ahead.
and they probably locked in like a 2% interest rate when the rates were low too. Like who knows when they
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
cut it.
exactly. Yeah, or when they finished building and stuff like that. Yeah, so I don't know if rates, so rates have shot up and some of that factors in, but I started shopping when I left Hawaii, so like March of 22, basically right before rates like exploded, and that was still the case. And I haven't even looked now that rates are at like 7%. So now it's probably even worse. So I don't know if that tells me like either home prices are going to come down or rents are going to go up, because that's just like anyone who owns houses in these areas, they're not going to accept like they're just going to raise because they see how expensive it is to live here. And if no one can buy houses, then all those people shopping for houses are going to be forced to rent. So the demand for rentals should shoot up. And while the demand for rentals are shooting up, you would think the price that people want, uh, or the price that people are willing to accept for rent would also go up. But I don't know, because yeah, maybe I'm missing the option or the opportunity to buy in now before rents like explode in this area. I don't know. What do you think?
I have a feeling rents are going to explode just because. I mean, I listened to that investors podcast you turned me on with Preston, and I think
Oh
that's
yeah.
where I'll show you. I don't know. Can you see my screen? I'm sharing it right now.
Uh, yep.
So
It's like loading right now. Oh yeah.
this chart it's
Yep.
the M2 money supply over. This is in our lifetime
Yeah.
from 1995 to now, and it's like a nice little steady
Yep.
increase all the way up to 2020 and then COVID, and it just shoots up and it gets all
Explodes. Yeah.
yeah, it just looks ugly. And I mean, with that, and then the supply, like it's not just the supply issues. It's not just COVID supply. With all this just fiat money just given out, like inflation's gonna. It's I don't see how they're gonna tame that anytime soon. And I think rent's gonna feel a big brunt of it. But
Yeah. And
that's my
rent is
prediction.
usually one of the lagging indicators, right? Because people lock in for 1 year, 6 months. You know what I mean? So they have long leases, and you can't adjust the rent anytime in that window. You have to wait until the contract expires to increase the rent.
Yeah, but it's definitely it's a weird market right now. I really like short-term rentals because you can
Hmm.
get I got one in Destin, and the cash flow on those things is insane. It's
Oh
a lot
yeah,
more work,
crazy. Yeah. Hmm.
but for the same investment,
You're
like you're
compensated for it. Yeah.
hmm and I don't know how I would do that long distance. I think that would be difficult. Like I think if you could get now they have like the Wi-Fi locks, so you could change
Yeah.
the lock on your phone. The only thing you need is a cleaning service that you really
Yeah.
trust, and could be there like anytime you need a changeover cleaning, which probably would be a little costly. So if you,
Yeah. There's a couple people I think I've seen online. There's like companies that are specializing in like property management for short-term rentals. So they like build up a portfolio of short-term rentals and they go around and do like the cleaning and the maintenance and scheduling and answering all the calls and stuff like that. But I'm sure they charge a pretty penny for doing the service.
yeah, I looked into them. Vacasa is like a really big one in the Panhandle, and they charge
Hmm.
25%. Like they're
Holy
25%.
shit.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like no
usually it's like
way.
10%. Yeah.
But it really, I mean, the numbers work out because people are making that much more on their short-term
Hmm.
rentals. But that includes everything, like you said, maintenance and scheduling and all that stuff would not be too hard to do even with a full-time job.
Yeah.
I think the only thing you need someone to be there for is changeover cleanings. So if you can
Yeah.
get
A
that,
cleaning service. Yeah.
it would be a lot cheaper than 25%. I
Hmm.
think that's something I want to get into, but I gotta get a job first before I can, where they'll give me another
you,
loan.
yeah, you need the W-2 income to
Yeah.
show. Yeah, I don't know how people, I don't know enough about the loan writing process, I guess, for your, because it's only 90% of your rental income will qualify towards the next uh, house that you buy. And so these people have got to have huge cash flows before they finally decide to quit their job and still be able to purchase new ones, unless they're buying all cash. I don't know. But I guess maybe when you're north of 10 properties too, the government stops loaning you money. So maybe that's,
Yeah. No, I definitely jumped the ship a little early on the job thing, but it'll work out.
yeah. Are you thinking about looking for another job or are you,
I honestly like I'm pretty happy just writing out this year and then going to grad school and using the GI Bill and then so maybe like 3 years down the road, but uh,
yeah,
it could change.
that'd be awesome if you could find a job that's willing to pay for your master's or your graduate education, and then you just get to collect the GI Bill in pocket. Because I think there was like a handful of us that did the Montgomery GI Bill, right? I think it was like me, you, Blake, and I don't, did you end up doing the Montgomery or did you
Well,
do the post 9/11?
I think I did it. I think I paid into it unwillingly, like not
Yeah.
knowingly, because they start charging you while we're in college, and I didn't know what the
Yep.
hell that was. And then I think I had the post 9/11, which seems like the better deal, honestly, because they pay for your BAH and books and all that.
Yeah. Any time you can go back and change which one you want to be, so you can only go one way. You can only go from the Montgomery to the post 9/11. You can't go from post 9/11 to Montgomery. But some of the benefits of the Montgomery is, like I'm saying, they pay you cash instead of the
Yeah,
post 9/11 that pays to the school. So if they pay you cash and you find a company that also pays for your master's, then you can double dip and the company can pay for it, and then you can just collect all the money out from the Montgomery GI Bill.
I
And
got you. That's one of my complaints. I don't know if you remember this day in OCS. This was bad. They need to fix this. Like you're tired, you're beat down, and you're going in those lectures that no one can stay awake for. And one of them
yeah,
is the Montgomery versus post 9/11, and they make you sign a paper there, and it's so
yeah,
confusing.
you're making all these permanent life decisions there too, and you're just like, yeah,
Uh,
they should do that during like Indoc week when you're not as, or they should have like a couple extra days before you start, like, or maybe even way at the end. But I guess they probably can't do it at the end because you're already like too far in or something.
too
I don't
far
know.
in because they start
Yeah,
paying you right away.
yeah.
So, what would you say your favorite deal in real estate has been so far?
Oh, definitely the first house. So anytime you can buy, because like I basically bought a 6-bedroom apartment complex, uh, and and so yeah, house hacking is super good. But I mean, if I was giving advice, or all the times I gave advice to people on the boat, I would tell them like, look, use your first time home buyer's loan, buy a duplex, live in half of it, rent out the other half, and then as soon as you have enough, then move on and buy another house with your VA loan. And that's like the cookie cutter recipe that I would give to everybody. Like, find a duplex or a house that you can turn into a duplex by building a wall that has 2 separate entrances already or something like that, and just like start there and then move your way up. Use that first time homebuyers loan while it's available to you. Save your VA loan for your next house because the VA loan will be there and you can reuse it as many times as you want.
Yeah.
But that first time homebuyers loan isn't available. But yeah, that's my advice to everybody. And I would take that same advice. So here in Virginia, I was shopping for duplexes, but didn't find anything because my wife's tired of roommates now and tells me no more roommates. Like, I would obviously live with roommates for forever because it's super cheap, but she's tired of it.
Yeah, I can see that. But so what
Yeah.
what mistakes would you say, or is there anything you wish you would have done better on that first property?
I don't know about the first property, but the property in South Carolina, definitely. There's a handful of gotchas that people should be aware of. Taxes are a big one. So in South Carolina, when you buy a house, they have two different tax rates for you. There's the tax rate if you live in the state and you're collecting the rental income in the state, and then there's the tax rate if you're an out-of-state owner of that
Yeah,
property. And that transition over killed me. I owed
yeah,
so much money in back taxes because of I didn't know about it, and I had to like tell the South Carolina to like change my tax rate, and I didn't. And yeah, for like a year and a half, I was paying like a ton of money in back taxes. So I would say, yeah, definitely watch the tax rates and uh, be familiar with the laws of your state before you get started. So like in Washington, D.C., it is almost impossible to evict people uh, and there's a ton of people right now that are backlogged on evictions and they haven't paid rent for, 3
jeez,
years. Yeah,
terrible.
because in Washington, D.C., they give you 6 months before you can start like the eviction process. And if you pay any amount of money towards your rent, it's like some minimum, it's like 10% of the rent that is owed, you get another 6 months before they can restart the eviction. So you go through like paying, a couple $100 every 6 months for rent, and people are owed like so much money. It's just like, there's like some gotchas in your area that any knowledgeable real estate agent should be able to forewarn you about. But like you said, sometimes you don't know the questions to ask. Um, and yeah, it doing the state specific research, I think, is important in getting to know kind of your area and stuff. But some of that you just have to like, make the first step and get out there and start going around and asking questions and stuff like that. Oh, another one is flood insurance. So I was like, I had put in an offer in a house or on a house in South Carolina. And I don't know, I had never done this before, but I went around and I was like asking some of the neighbors that are outside. I was like, oh, how do you like the area? What do you think of the house? Blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, it's great as long as you don't mind canoeing to your house in the spring. And I'm like, what the fuck? What do you mean canoeing to my house? They're like, yeah, it floods super bad on this street and it just like stays that way for like 3 weeks at a time. And I
Jeez.
was like, oh my gosh. And then I looked at flood insurance, and same thing with flooding insurance. It's like super cheap if you're the primary, if you're like renting there or you're living there for your primary residence. And then as soon as you move out and try to rent that house, the flood insurance tripled. And I was like, holy cow, it would have made the house like completely non-affordable. I was just like, so definitely I dodged a bullet there, and a lot of it has just been luck so far. But yeah, leveraging other people's experience helps avoid some of those pitfalls that you don't even know about.
Yeah, hopefully someone in maybe going to power school or will realize some of these because that got the tax thing got me too. It was kind of the
Yeah,
opposite. I was paying 6% the whole time. I didn't realize if I submitted a paper, I could pay 4% while I lived there. And I mean,
yeah, yeah,
4 to 6% is significant. And it doesn't seem
yeah.
like it, but it is.
It doesn't seem like it, but it's a big jump in your monthly payment, that's for sure.
Yeah, man. All right, so the other last real estate question I got is I was amazed by I love that Park Circle house. That was so cool. And then the
Yeah,
amount of renovations you did. Like you had tools everywhere. You just like ripping out drywall, changing out the whole kitchen. Um, so you said your dad it was like a big influence in doing that. What kind of roadblocks have you found, and do you have any tips for someone that isn't quite as handy as you that wants to save some money and fix up their house?
yeah. So the tips I would be super careful with permits. So I haven't run into this problem yet, but I'm sure it's going to catch up to me someday. I haven't pulled any permits for any of the work that I've done, which is very bad. And it doesn't matter if you keep the house forever, which is part of my factor in for keeping the houses forever. Um, there's some work that you should be extra careful with doing. So I would be super careful with plumbing.
Yeah.
The reason why you should be super careful with plumbing is because most of the time you close up the wall after you've done the work and you won't notice the leak until, hundreds of dollars of damage have been done, or thousands of dollars in damage depending. So that's why plumbing is usually like you should be careful doing it. So there's certain parts of plumbing. So like soldering new fixtures and stuff like that you should probably be cautious about if you don't have a way to test it for leaks ahead of time, or just be super diligent in making sure that you test it for leaks after doing it. So check all your joints and stuff like that. The other one is electrical. For a similar reason, it goes behind the wall and it's closed up. It can start fires if it's not done. So just be super diligent with like testing that stuff and make sure. Usually with electrical, kind of right away if you wired something backwards because it'll spark. But
Yeah.
yeah, I I remember, it's just a quick side story. Gladys was supposed to be changing out all the outlets in South Carolina, and I had an outlet tester, and I told her to go around and test all the outlets before she started changing them to make sure the breakers were out.
Oh no.
And on those old houses, not all of the circuit breakers in a room. Like sometimes they split the rooms across two breakers for whatever strange
Yeah, it's
reason.
weird.
Yeah, and so she tested like the first two in the room, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I guess all of these are dead." And then she's, poking around with a screwdriver, changing outlets and stuff, and she and she touches one, and it like zaps her, and she throws the screwdriver into the air, and it like gets stuck in the ceiling and stuff. It was so funny. She was okay. Nobody was harmed in this, but gosh, it was so funny. Yeah, you definitely be careful with electrical. Use all the correct tools for testing to make sure that that stuff's dead. But yeah, the tips, literally with YouTube, you can learn anything nowadays, and you can watch exactly how things are supposed to be done. And, some of that is like watching professional sports players, and you can see exactly what you're supposed to do, like how you're supposed to throw the ball, where you're supposed to be on the field. But when it comes to actually like doing that stuff in real time, it's way harder than it looks. Which is similar to remodeling. So just be patient while you're learning and just like expect to have to redo stuff, But yeah, I'd be careful going too cheap on stuff in rental properties. But that's all the tips I can think of.
Do you think you're in the positive? You think you save money rather than if you contracted everything you did out? Like,
Oh, definitely. So like the house in Charleston, I was able to remodel and purchase all my tools for like $20,000. And like you said, I gutted the entire kitchen all the way down to the subfloor. I took out all the fixtures. I like put in new cabinets, put in a new sink, built the countertops for it, bought new appliances. That was just the kitchen. And then, the laundry room I redid. I retiled the floor. I had to change out some of the walls because there was some water damage from the old washer and dryer. I cleaned up like all the water damage, and then all the bathrooms, I like removed the, 1980s, like cast iron tubs and like put in new showers and stuff like that. And I replaced all the windows and stuff, all for like $20,000. It was like so much cheaper for me to go through and do that work myself. And, so far the house is still standing, so I guess it was okay.
was Gladys the other muscle for this? Because a lot of those things you need like two people to like. I would imagine installing a shower. You can't do that all by yourself.
Yeah, so actually the hardest thing to do by yourself is hang drywall because you have to throw the drywall up there and try to screw it in at the same time, which is almost
Yeah.
impossible. So yeah, I would. There was a lot of bribing going on with people from my prototype class. I like giving them beer and stuff like that, trying to get them to come over and help me for certain things. So I remember Judith Kaler and Chase Paget, they were big helps in my home remodel project. She'd always help me paint, and he was helping me with stuff. And people are just interested in learning some of those skills, so they'll come over and help out just for that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was in awe when I know you cooked some steaks for us one night,
Yeah.
and gosh, you just tore that thing up, and it looks awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe if I remember, I'll send you the pictures of when it was completed. I don't know if you ever saw the finished product. Or maybe you
No,
did see the finished product, but you didn't see the start. Yeah, I'll
no, I
send them
saw like
over
some
if I remember.
bathrooms. Yeah, some bathrooms
Hmm.
in the kitchen. I think were done, and but you still were doing a lot of work. All right, so I'm gonna move on to your Navy experience because
Yeah.
uh, I think that's interesting too. Talking about power school, so nuclear power school there in South Carolina. How did that how did that challenge you?
Yeah. So I've read, let's see, I can't remember which book it is. I think it's called The Happiness Advantage. It talks about going from being a big fish in a little pond to being a little fish in a big pond, and how people go from like being used to be in the top, like 1% of their college or their high school or whatever.
Yeah,
And, they're kicking ass, getting good grades, all of that stuff. And then you take all of those people that are like the top 1 or top 10% from their high schools, and then you put them into a classroom, basically, which is what they do in power school. All the people that are like the top 10% from their localized area, and now you're competing against all of those people. So that was a huge shock for me, going from like college was super easy. I was sleeping through classes. I just did the homework, went to the tests, got A's, blah blah blah. And then I show up to power school, and I like almost failed the first test, and I'm like, holy cow, what is going on? It was like a huge shock to me, and then everyone else is like having an easy time, and I'm just like, wait a second, I need to like reevaluate. I need to start studying more. I was like, and I just like went super overboard right at the beginning, and I wish I wish I hadn't, because they say like 2.8 to dive, or whatever the thumb rule was, is like
it's two
like
five to stay alive. They moved it to 2.8.
2.5 to stay alive. Yeah,
It
yeah.
was messed
So it was
up
like
on the boat, but 2.5 in power school.
yeah, yeah. So 2.5 to stay alive. So you just need a 2.5, and I worked way harder than I need to just get 2.5s. And I was like trying to compete with like the top people, and it's just like power school is not set up to fit my mental like architect for learning.
It's a lot of
And I was
memorization,
like,
right?
yeah, it's a lot of like brute memorization, and they want you to write it the exact way. They don't care if you got the concept right. Like if you miss that key word, like that's what they're grading for. And if you didn't write that key word, you're not getting all the points. It's like it doesn't matter if you like danced all around the right word. It's like you didn't have it, and they're like, all right, well, that's half credit. It's like, so yeah, I definitely struggled there. It got easier when I went to the boat, and it's very similar difficulty when you go to PNEO. Um, yeah, I I failed a lot of the in-house tests at PNEO, and then somehow passed comp. So everyone at my submarine wasn't expecting me to pass. I passed 2 out of the 5 exams, or maybe I passed 3 out of the 5 exams. I don't remember which way, but they were like, it's a roll of the dice, and then I passed first try, and so
It's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
very.
I had a similar like punch in the face where I was like, wait, this is this is rough. This is tough, and just put in a ton of time. And it's weird though. Like every week is a new topic. So every week I'm thinking, okay, I think I'm near last in the class, but I think this week I might be able to get the top score. Just keep trying to study, and I don't know. I made it through, but it was not enjoyable for sure.
Yeah, and it was hard because I was like interested in a lot of the stuff that we were learning about, but you didn't have time to like try to
No.
learn anything. It was like just memorize the stuff that they're going to ask on the tests. And the people that were able to do that like excelled, and they were treating it just like college, coming in, hanging out with their friends, and then leaving when they were done, and like never went on the weekends, never did any studying. I think I remember you and I were there like all the time studying. And
Yeah.
and yeah,
Lived
it
in the
was just like,
Rickover.
yeah, and like the structure and setup of doing like one course a week, and then still alternating through 3 courses at a time was, yeah, tough for me.
So
I
did it
don't know
get
about
better
you,
with
but
did it get better at prototype or how Power School compared to prototype?
Yeah, so at prototype, I was still, I think, the bottom 50%, but I was one of the first ones to qualify there, which is weird. Because, yeah, obviously, uh, yeah, it was tough because the comprehensive exam at prototype was like that 8-hour exam that we had to take, and I had
Yeah.
never, like the longest I had taken before that was probably like the 4-hour or 6-hour, whatever Power School comp was. The 8-hour exam is just like a whole nother like level. It's like I can't even explain it now because I haven't done anything like that since then, and that was a couple years ago. But like the mental drain on that, and I just I couldn't even like compete the whole time. Like people were taking breaks to eat and stuff, and I was just like scribbling like a madman
Strident.
the whole time. Yeah, because I was afraid of like running out of time and just like trying to write down everything I could. But and I think at prototype is when I was like very first starting to like understand the concept of like what they call like shotgunning, like just put anything you know about the subject on the paper to try to get some points.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I like did not understand that. And I was like, how could you write stuff if you don't even know if it's relevant? I just like could not process that when I was in power school. So that was obviously holding me back with some of that, like the way the testing is like formed. So some people that can identify how the system works and then play the system really well probably had a much easier time. But yeah,
I with the prototype exam, I think they do a good job of making you feel like 8 hours is not a long time because you're forced to be there for at least 12 hours a day. So it's almost like a little, you get a 4 hour break there after your exam. But
yeah.
I thought the schedule was brutal, like the rotating shift work. And
The rotating
then,
shift work, being forced to be there for 12 hours. Because, yeah, when they say forced to be there for 12 hours, you really were like forced to be there for 12 hours.
yeah,
I still think it's crazy. I don't know what I was thinking when I decided to remodel a house at the same time that we were going through that.
no, sleep is definitely valuable. I don't know how much you got. The one benefit though is I love getting off work in the morning and then you have like the whole city to yourself. Everyone's working during the weekday and it's kind of your off time. So
Yeah,
it's
no, that
nice.
reminds me of it was like transitioning from mids to swings or whatever. So it's like the middle of the night and I'm like banging away in the bathroom remodeling, trying to get one of the windows out or whatever. My neighbor came over and was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess you guys probably are sleeping, huh?" But I had just like gotten home from work and was like getting ready to get all my projects done and stuff. But yeah, that is something I miss is yeah, the city is like your oyster.
Yeah. And prototype, that was cool too, being on a crew. And so when you do those transitions, sometimes you'll either get together and all try to stay up together so you're all on the same sleep schedule. But I don't know. It
Yeah, that
was
was the first time that I really felt like part of the team because you create your own team with your little prototype crew. Everyone's kind of like working together to get through stuff, and at least we were. I don't know if everyone was like that. It seemed like there was some tension in some of the other ones, but yeah, that definitely carried on to my experience at the submarine because there was like 5 or 6 of us that became like best friends through the atrocities that you go through. Yeah.
yeah. So how was that? How was you get your orders to Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, and
Yeah,
you
once again, not somewhere I was planning on going. It was like fourth or fifth on my list. Everyone was all pissed that
yeah, I had
I
it way
got
up there.
assigned it. Yeah, it was like everyone's number one, and I was like not even interested. I wanted to go to San Diego or some of these other places. Um, yeah, so going to Hawaii was awesome. It was awesome for the first year. Well, the first year that I was there. When I first got there, we went on deployment. But the first year that I was there, it was awesome. Just living and exploring the island and stuff like that. But then the second year, so my third year there, you start to get like the island fever, and you're like, holy cow, it's so far to travel. It's like
Yeah.
13-hour plane rides back and forth. The tickets cost $12,000. So it's like,
Jeez.
uh, yeah, so you feel really isolated. You can't go home. But we traveled to a lot of the other islands, and you make pretty good money as a submarine officer, so we were able to fly back home for things that we needed to, like Christmas and the one time we had Christmas off. But yeah, going to
That's good.
see
One
some of
for
the
three.
islands and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, yeah. One was on deployment, and then one I was on duty for. So
That's
yeah,
almost
there's
worse,
definitely.
being on duty for Christmas.
Oh yeah, I was on duty for like almost all the holidays. It felt like. I think it was just because there was a lot of holidays, but
Usually they
yeah,
give the
that
single
was.
guys like Christmas, you know.
Oh no way, not on fast attacks, man. They don't give a
No?
fuck.
No?
Nope. Wherever you are in the rotation.
Were you three
And
sectioning
at
the
that
whole
time,
time?
yeah, pretty much.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
pretty much three section
Sorry.
the whole time. Uh, it's all right. It, you know how it goes. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
something I had no idea about when I signed up. It was like, what do you mean I have to be there? Like, even explaining the concept of duty to people that aren't in the military is just like, and even explaining submarine duty to other people's duty, they just like don't understand. They're like, "What do you mean you have duty every 3 days, not once a month?" And you're like, "Yeah,
And a lot of those days are packed, like the work approval
oh
process, all
yeah,
the stuff you have to do. Like I didn't know that was part of the job of like reviewing tags and all that kind of stuff.
yeah." It's so crazy to think about because like when you compare to the the airplane or like people that are pilots and stuff, like they don't do any of that bullshit. Like their job is to fly the plane and shoot bad guys. I don't, yeah, I don't understand why the submarine force doesn't like contract out to like, I don't know, like the reserves or have like off crew people take it when they're in port or things like that. Yeah.
I think that would be really good because the only argument I hear is that we need to be able to fix it at sea. And I think we can still have that muscle and not like be three section import when, especially you have at prototypes, you have
Yeah.
civilians working the prototype ships.
Yeah,
So we can,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, it turns out when you stand your proficiency once a month, that's the same. Like you could stand duty once a month and still know how to hang tags and fix stuff and be safe. You know what I mean? Like once you
Yeah.
qualify and stand it a couple times, like you're not gonna like I'm never gonna forget how to do work controls because I processed hundreds and hundreds of tags in the shipyard because we did a we did a deployment right when I got there and then pulled into the shipyard for the rest of the time that I was there. So I got to see
Oh,
kind
okay.
of both sides. I missed the like workup side, but I got to see like a pretty good chunk of the submarine life cycle. And yeah, there's no way I'm gonna forget how to do fucking work controls. It's like burned into my memory now.
Yeah. I always thought the proficiency thing was silly too. Like who knows what kind of duty day you're gonna have? You may just be there and it may be a light day and you don't do anything, but you're there, so you're proficient now. So I don't know if there's a better way
Yeah.
to do that. Um, so ultimately, you serve a successful tour there in Pearl. So now you're in Virginia. And any other like big takeaways submarine life? So if there's new guys coming out of high school or in college, not knowing what they want to do, or maybe in the academy, why? What are the big things you wish you would have known about submarines, and what's your overall impression?
Yeah, I can't remember where I heard this. I think it was when we were at OCS. Someone described like their time at OCS as like the most fun that you never want to have again.
Yeah,
And that like sums up my entire time in the military. It's like because of like the type of person I am, I'm able to see like the positive and all this stuff, and it's like the most fun. But like, there's no way that I would go back to do it again. Like, for instance, being a department head, would I make the same choice to do it again? I don't know. That's really hard. I've only given it brief thought, but like some of the things that I've gotten access to because of that choice in college, so like getting access to the VA loan combined with my knowledge of real estate is huge. Like I could just use that to leverage to like, buy houses for the rest of my life and be set type thing. And the access to capital that you get, so like you're making good money in college with relatively low amounts of debt, and you can go out and buy houses or invest in pretty much whatever you want to at that time. And so like that that came at like such a critical point in life that I think I was able to make a lot of early investments that I could like not do any more investing and just kind of chill for the rest of my life and still be set up for retirement when I finally get there. Not that that's what I'm going to do, but I think even you and I both, it sounds like, have made very good choices in our early 20s that will definitely set us up for life. So if without knowing like what the opportunity cost is, because like I guess you could kind of do some of the same stuff just working at a normal like engineering firm, you know, because you're making probably about the same and you probably have way more time to learn and do stuff on your own. So it's really hard to compare without knowing the opportunity cost. Because like sure, I probably could have gotten hired at the company that I was working at Samtech, and been like an engineer there, making probably like I don't know $60,000 a year there. But I don't know yeah, it's tough because the skills that you learn, like leadership and all that stuff, like how to work in a team and things like that, is like you're like thrown into with the military. Like you have no choice.
I completely agree, and that's what I think is like the big benefit is the amount of the stressful situation and like high cost risk analysis is hard to match in the submarines, and then the fact that your engineering stays with you the whole tour there, and you're having to give trainings, talk in front of your division, and just public speaking is something I never liked to do. Like I was always like, oh, I'll just shut up and sit here in the corner type thing. But
Oh yeah, same.
being comfortable talking to people was something I thought submarines helped a lot. So that brings me. I think submarines are really cool and super like the most important part of our military. But I recently read an article from the Naval Institute talking about submarine retention, and one of the key points they're saying that is hampering submarine retention is they're not the minimum service requirement is too short. They need to lengthen it more than 5 years. Whereas like pilots, I know it's usually 8 years from when they get their wings. So ultimately, like no pilot's going to serve less than 10 years for the most part. I was wondering what your take is on that.
Yeah, that absolutely blows my mind because knowing what the submarine retention for junior officers is like in the 40%. So it's like 60% of people choose to get out. Like they don't have their pick of the cream of the crop JOs to go on to be department heads, which I think is a compounding problem because when you have bad department heads, then JOs don't want to stay in even more. Like there's some stuff you can fix, but like department heads definitely amplify some of the shitty stuff. I don't know if you had the experience with bad department heads, but I had a handful of ones that I really did not like.
I was pretty lucky. They really, they seeing them made me want to stay in, but ultimately I decided to get out.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I could
Well,
see that. I can see
yeah,
some of the JOs I worked with that are going into department, maybe going department heads or whatever, or are who knows. I was like,
yeah.
I would not want to be on that boat. I'll leave it
Yeah,
at that.
imagine that person being in charge. So, yeah, so I don't think I wish I knew the numbers now, how many people apply to be apply to the NUPOC program and get turned away, because ultimately that's why they started the NUPOC program, was to supplement their recruitment because they weren't getting enough people from ROTC and from the academy, and the people that were like, purposely throwing the interviews and things like that because they did not want to go submarines.
Yeah.
So they started NUPOC, and they pay a pretty good amount to people, like upwards of like 200K to people in college to come be submarine officers, and that's a lot of money to try to like say, hey, not only like, cause like, let's see, you like you have if you tack a 10-year commitment on top of that, like how much more are you going to have to pay to get people to sign up for that 10-year commitment? Because I don't know anybody that applied to the program and didn't get accepted. You know what I mean? Like you hear about people not passing the interviews, but I think I always thought that those were people from like the academy or the corps of cadets or whatever that didn't want to be submarine officers anyways, or nuclear power because there's other options. But
We had a
you know
few,
what I
there's
mean?
not many, but yeah, I know a few. I
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
wouldn't have
because
done it. I wouldn't have done it though if it was like a 10-year commitment. I
Yeah,
wasn't
me
sure I
either.
wanted to be a submarine officer. I mean, I looked pretty
Yeah,
cool and I was ready to do 20 if I really enjoyed it. But
yeah, that similar thing for me. I joined with the intention of doing 20 because I was 20 at the time that I started NUPOC. I was like, holy cow, I could be retired by the time I'm 40. Easy day. So I think that guy is just so disconnected from what actually happens. It's just been too long or whatever. Because yeah, I'm in the same boat. I wouldn't have joined if I had to do it for 10 years. 5 years, I was like, sure, I could do that easy. Because he's talking about like, oh, people are just so far from retirement that we can't trap them in with their retirement. And it's like, no, that's bullshit, because I'll be at 7 years by the time I'm done with my short tour, which is like pretty much 10 years at the same time, like almost at the hump. And I'm still going to choose to get out and not go be a department head.
yeah, like of course, if you force people to be department heads, there's going to be more. Percentage is going to be 100. Like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
going to fix that problem, but that's not. It's going to cause a whole more bunch of
I don't,
issues.
I don't even think it would fix that problem, because I think they would see the attrition through the program increase.
Like PNEO
You know what I mean?
failures, like and then people
Yeah,
are just like, screw
people
this.
purposely fail in PNEO because they want to get out and transfer from the community. People not finishing power school, like all the way through. Like imagine if you had that 10-year window of all that doom and gloom hanging over your head while you're going through the already like shittiest parts. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like you're failing tests at power school and you're like, oh my god, I've got 10 more years of this. Like, no, fuck that. There's no way. Because like even when people get to the boat, they sat out all the time. Like we lost 3 JOs from that. It's like,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's like I think they would see attrition in the program like rise to compensate that.
No,
Yeah, because I don't know about you, but the whole time I was on the boat, I was like, holy shit, this is not worth it. I could just like tell them that I'm sad and don't want to do this anymore.
yeah.
It's
There's a
like,
lot of guys
yeah,
like that. A lot. I mean, very few actually do it, but
actually
a
do
lot of
it right. But everyone is thinking
everyone's
it. Yeah.
yeah. Everyone. I don't know if they joke about it or it's in the air, so it's not good. So hopefully they fix some stuff. But I know they're fixing prototype a little bit, which that definitely I thought that was kind of it wore on people where you have the rigors of prototype and you roll right into the boat, where I don't think you necessarily need to make prototype that intense, and they're giving them like a little more time to shift sleep schedule and all that. I think there's like 5 crews now, or like there's a whole extra crew. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that would be helpful, because I honestly didn't mind the rotating shift work that much, which sounds weird, but I'm sure I did at the time. But thinking back, I'm like, I enjoyed the random times of being awake and like you said, having the city to yourself. I think back fondly on those memories of like running around, and that's a danger too. That's why they tell you not to go to short tours, because you forget about all the things that happened on the submarine, and then they're like, oh, here, you could make $200,000 a year after taxes being an eng in Hawaii. And then they
Yeah.
like get you doing that. Yeah, no way. I'm like keeping a little journal, reminding myself of things that I don't want to go back and do.
I definitely, yeah, more power to them though. Those guys are freaking, that's intense. And I mean, we need them. So that's, I'm happy for the people that decide to stay in, but I'm not gonna join them.
Yeah, I definitely wish they would focus on changing some of the shitty aspects of the job instead of like just forcing people to stay in for 10 years.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, that's kind of a downer to go out on, but you got any save rounds?
Not that I can think of. We should definitely catch up some other time and talk about stuff. This has
Yeah,
been fun. I've enjoyed chatting.
I'm unemployed, so I might just go out to DC and I'll let you know.
Yeah, you come stay with us. That'd be good.
All right, Travis. Well, thank you so much for being on the Mike White podcast. That is
Yeah.
episode 3. See ya.
All right. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Mike White podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Mike White Pod, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Y'all have a great day.